Hey everyone, we're back for another edition of Meet at the Tavern. Jack and I are happy to be here, and we have our favorite drinks in hand.
Rum and Coke.
Oh yeah,
Spice rum.
Admiral Nelson.
It's a nice rank.
I want to be a Colonel General.
It's better than Captain Morgan because she's only a captain.
That's right.
Nelson's an admiral.
Hey, so did you see our Vice President, Kamala Harris, finally made it to south of the border? Well, she passed us south of the border and went right to Mexico and Guatemala. I saw bits and pieces of her little press conference, and she said, we need to find out the root causes of why people are coming here to the United States. My question is I have two questions for our administration. The first is, why aren't we finishing the wall to stop people from coming here illegally? And then let's work with other countries to find out why these people are coming here. And second, why are millions and millions and billions of dollars being sent to other countries? We have people in this country that are homeless, that are hungry, they need assistance right here in the United States of America. I know it's not just this administration. Every administration in the past is the same way about sending money to other countries. It's got to stop.
Yeah, except for the last one. He stopped it.
He did. He did slow it down a lot.
And then he gave it back to them when they did their job on what the agreement was. So I heard Texas is, I don't know, maybe somebody's listening to our podcast because I heard Texas is thinking about finishing the wall on their own. And we've been preaching that now for a couple of months, that they should activate their National Guard and build their own wall, build a government for it. Build a government for the National Guard and build the government for finishing their job.
Right.
And Kamala Harris, I didn't listen to a lot of it either, but it was filled with more questions than answers of why, her statements were juvenile.
And what's up with her laugh all the time? Is this funny? Does she have like a mental condition where she has to laugh at everything?
Well, you know what? It is funny to her because it doesn't affect her life.
Right.
They're insulated, I mean, everything she's talking about is supposed to be part of this Unity Task Force that we're going to be covering.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why they see a problem in it if they have this whole 6 sections of accomplishments that they think they can do.
So we do a debate question every week, and I'm going to hit you with a debate question. And it kind of ties in to this Biden-Sanders manifesto. What we'll be talking about, it's also called the Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force Recommendations. It's broken down into 6 sections, and this is what Joe Biden had to agree to get the support of Bernie Sanders and his supporters. So today, we're going to be doing part 1 of a 6-part series. It's going to come out tomorrow at 10 a.m. We're going to give you our breakdown of what this manifesto is. So my question to you, Jack, is this. Do you feel climate change is the greatest threat to humanity today? Or do you feel that our country balances itself out through, some years we have colder temperatures, some years we have warmer temperatures. What's your take on the climate issue that faces not only we, the constituents, but also politicians, and depending on if you're a Republican or a Democrat? Because I know as Republicans, I don't think we have global warming, but Democrats feel it's a major issue, and we're going to perish away from global warming. So what's your take on it?
Okay, I got a take on that. And first off, Joe Biden said that there's 3 reasons. 3 different times, 3 different experts told him what's the number 1 problem facing the United States. One was systemic racism.
Nope.
I don't think so.
Nope.
Then the other one, he was told by the Joint Chief of Staffs of our military that the number 1 issue is climate problems. And I got to tell you, if I was the President of the United States and my Joint Chief of Staff came to me and said that, is our biggest number one fear of the world, I would fire them.
So we're not worried about China, Japan, or Iran, or North Korea?
North Korea, no. We're not worried about border problems. We're not worried about riots in our streets. We're not worried about socialism embedding itself in our government. None of those problems. That's not the problem. So those guys will get fired. Now, to go back to your question. When I was in elementary school, I was taught that we were all going to freeze to death in the 70s. We are going to be covered with glaciers are coming back, and we are all going to freeze to death. And that put a fear in me as a little kid.
I imagine it would.
I didn't want to die by freezing to death. I didn't want the glacier to end up in my backyard as much as I like snow days.
That's why I came to South Carolina, so I wouldn't freeze to death in New York.
Yeah, I would, global warming to me is not completely terrible because my former president bought a mansion on an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So I'm thinking I'm pretty safe throughout my life since he can spend $10 million on a place to live in the middle of the ocean worrying about global warming.
Yeah, so my take is that the Earth corrects itself. It heats up and it cools down. And for residents of South Carolina this past winter, they would say we had global cooling.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty darn cold.
I'm still waiting for global warming because I think we're going through a cool down right now. And I think that when I was a kid, and then as I got older, I paid attention and I was watching a documentary, actually. I remember watching it as a kid. I can't believe you asked this question because we don't go over this question.
Nope.
But they had done drilling in the Arctic and found different phases in the ice of global warming and global cooling down. So what happens when you have global warming is that the Earth warms up and melts the glaciers. When the glaciers melt, it brings warm water down to the the countries, the continents. So what happens is when these glaciers warm up, they come down, they warm the ocean. The ocean and then returns and starts to produce rain like we had this last winter. And it brings cloudy weather and rain and snow in other places, and it causes a cool down. And the cool down then starts another mini ice age, which is what we had during the Revolutionary War in the 50s, 1950s. We have different sections of it, and that's why in the 70s they were saying we're going to freeze to death. Because we were coming off of a mini ice age, as they did in the Revolutionary War. The Earth is alive. And if the Earth doesn't correct itself, then we have a problem. And that goes to fossil fuels. You'll run out of fossil fuels in the Middle East, but they're produced someplace else.
Yep.
And when the world stops making fossil fuels, then we're in trouble. Because then it's dying. So I don't see any of that. I don't see it in any of the scientists that they say, because they don't name any of the scientists that are saying this.
Right. So getting back to this past winter here in South Carolina, I know you can't base global cooling or global warming on 1 year. But that's my point. Neither can scientists. There's so many factors that need to be considered. Climate is an interdisciplinary subject requiring insight from many fields. Several scientists, they only master one field. It takes many disciplines to make a correct determination. So you can't make it on just like over a couple years. It's got to be hundreds of years.
Some of this goes over, like you said, on the first part of this Biden thing, And the science that's running it, one of them is MIT. And where do they get the money to do this is through liberal think tanks. So what's their conclusion going to be?
Right.
Whoever's paying for dinner that night,
Yep.
It's going to side with them. Because if it doesn't side with them, well, they're going to have to eat off of paper plates and have leftovers.
Hey, so this Biden-Sanders manifesto, It's
Did that
on.
answer your question?
It did. I appreciate it.
I had a little thing too. Well, I could do it later.
You sure?
Yeah, it's like a little introduction I had of this Biden manifesto and why it was created.
All right, let me get this first. I'm just going to tell people about our website.
Okay.
So this Biden-Sanders manifesto, it's up on our website. It's there for you to download so you can follow along. It's under the Federalist Papers at the bottom. Fedupwithpolitics.com. Read it for yourself. Follow along. And section 1 is combating the climate crisis and pursuing environmental justice. Go ahead with your introduction, Jack.
All right, my introduction for this, I looked into it a little bit and then we'll get into it line by line because that's what me and Dennis do. So, this is how Joe Biden got elected. Towards the end of the Democratic primary, the two candidates were Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. And I just wanted you to understand, I didn't agree with him or his supporters, but Joe Biden, how in the hell he got into the primaries, I have no idea. But you better believe that the Democratic Party rigged it again with the numbers. First it was with Hillary and then it was Joe Biden. They weren't going to let Sanders be the nominee because he's not a Democrat. He's an independent. And so he wasn't going to get the Democratic money. So it was going to go to a Democrat, and they picked Biden. And they picked Biden, why? Because he's weak-minded. And they knew if he was going to be their president, they can say what he's going to do. So Biden's people asked Bernie's people, how are they going to get the supporters? And Sanders came up with this task force recommendation. There's 6 topics, and they were made up. The first one, combating the climate crisis, which we just discussed very briefly on it.
We'll get into more of that in a minute.
Yeah. And, pursuing environmental justice. The second one was protecting communities by reframing our criminal justice system. The third one is building a stronger, fairer economy. The fourth one is providing a world-class education in every zip code. Number 5 is achieving universal, affordable, quality health care. And the last one, creating a 21st century immigration system. Here we go. So it's not comprehensive immigration reform. Now it's 21st century immigration system.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy.
Yeah, in the first paragraph on the recommendation, it goes on about how thousands of people are dying because of global warming. And President Trump was callous and willfully denies science and explains why so many are suffering. But he didn't. Under him, they had the cleanest water. And, people aren't in business to put themselves out of business by ruining the climate. They're in business to stay in business forever.
Right.
And he understood this. So I looked into who's doing the scientific research on this subject. All the programs I was able to review were friendly to the left. And they were getting the money from the left. So the biggest one that I could find, the name brand was MIT, which has an integrated global system modeling. And it was modeling the interactions of human and Earth systems. So they had 2 systems going. One was the Economic Project and Policy Analysis, EPPA. And the other one was MIT Earth Systems Modeling. So the EPPA simulated the evolution of economic, demographic, trade, and technologies, processes involved in activities that affect the environment. How in the hell can you do that when the economy, last year's economy didn't do anything. It shut down. How did that affect the atmosphere? I don't think it affected it at all. Everybody stayed home and watched TV. Electric TVs, by the way.
Even the waters were cleaner last year.
Yeah, and MESSM reacts to what supposedly man does. Again, all put in with slanted judgment by the system. They're just putting numbers into a program and see where it comes out on the end.
Yeah.
So that was my opening with it. This is how Biden was able to get Sanders supported so he could get elected. Now, we can go into the other whole thing with cheating and this and that. That's going to take years to prove, and I don't want to get into that. That's a different podcast.
Sure.
When all the lawsuits come through.
You know, in here it says urban and rural communities have suffered tens of billions of dollars in economic losses. That statement is true. Several states over the last several years have suffered lots of damage due to their infrastructure through hurricanes, earthquakes. But the next part, I feel is false. It says, neighborhoods have been all but wiped off the face of the map in Florida. Now, in 2018, Florida got hit with Hurricane Michael. And one city got hit pretty hard, and that was Mexico Beach. But the way they're talking, it's like there's no people left, there's no infrastructure left. I mean, 90% of the town was destroyed. But you know what? The people are still there, and they're still rebuilding. I mean, to this day, they still have no gas stations, and their bank just reopened a few weeks ago. The town mayor said FEMA has so far reimbursed only about half of what is needed for rebuilding. So the only justice needed here is the federal government needs to get off their ass and get the money to the people, Jack. That's what they need. It isn't about economic losses right now. The money's available. Give it to the people so they can rebuild. That's what it comes down to. It's a lazy government bureaucratic agencies.
Well, I have here in their second paragraph, I'm sorry, I highlighted, impacts of climate change are not evenly distributed in our society or our economy. Communities of color, low-income families, and indigenous communities have long suffered disproportionate and cumulative harm from pollution, water pollution, toxic sites. Highways been built to enforce racial segregation in our cities with federal dollars and federal policy support. Who did that? Who made those neighborhoods? You want to know who made those neighborhoods? We did it last 2 podcasts ago. Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws, they got complaints in the South by white communities that they were getting minorities into their neighborhoods and they didn't want it. So they built highways through these neighborhoods, and that's where that saying came, the wrong side of the tracks. This is in democratic neighborhoods, you know? Then they talk about coal mine companies. They want to put them out of business, but they want to make sure that they fund the retirees that promise health care. How can you do that when they're out of business?
Right.
You just shut them down. So how do they fund pension systems and continue with their benefits? Mm-hmm. You can't.
Right. So the next part that stands out to me, it says that millions of Americans have been denied access to clean, safe drinking water and even the most basic wastewater infrastructure. Again, this is false. No one has been denied access to clean, safe drinking water. The problem, again, is our government sending billions of dollars to foreign countries instead of providing aid to this nation to take care of United States citizens. They are the problem, our elected officials. Yeah, there are certain areas of our country that need help building safe water drinking systems and wastewater systems. But under Biden, his $1.5 billion infrastructure plan currently in the Senate, only 2 cover the basic human necessities. The ones that lose out the most are smaller communities.
Well, you look at it. Flint, Michigan had a problem with their water. It was lead-based. Whose administration was that under?
Democratic.
Obama's.
Yep.
Who was the vice president at the time? Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
He sat in his office in Washington, D.C., while the people in Flint, Michigan couldn't drink water for months. I don't even know if it's up yet today.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But only two parts of it cover basic human necessities. Like I said, the smaller communities with less than 500 people that need it most, that's who lose out. This administration, this current administration, will send over $32 billion to other countries to help their people. What about helping our people? We need to consider these people before we help anybody else. I mean, that is nuts. I mean, Democrats believe they have a better way. But the only thing we see is they want to scare people. They want to scare you to believe that the world is coming to an end, that it's going to end tomorrow. I mean, we've seen this before. At the turn of the century, the world was supposed to end. We're still here.
Yeah.
The Mayan calendar said we were going to end a few years ago. But we found out that Mayan calendar is thousands of years off. Don't buy into their doomsday theories, because there's only one individual, one super being that knows when the world's going to end. And that is God.
Yeah, it's the one that made it.
Yep.
And you want to know something? When he realizes that we are not responsible enough to take care of it, he'll take it away.
You know, the funny part, you know who, for these climate change recommendations, you know who's in charge of it? John Kerry.
Yeah. Well, I was going to get into him on the second part, because I know you broke it down to 6. I broke it down to 12.
You know, John Kerry, who was Secretary of State under Obama, and now he's their climate czar, flies around in his private jet telling us about clean energy and net zero carbon emissions. You know who else was on that committee? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is probably one of the most clueless people I've ever listened to. Really don't need to say anything about her. We'll leave that out of touch with reality.
Yeah,
and I really can't believe people actually voted for her.
Well, not only did they vote for her, they voted for her twice. And we said that again. New York, wake up. Yeah, come on, brighten up. You got better people than Nadler, Jared Nadler, and AOC. So, on that board, you have former Secretary of State John Kerry. He's a co-chair. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a co-chair. Representative Kathy Castro. She's a Democrat, 14th District of Florida. Carrie Duggan. She's a CEO of sustainable strategy firm, board of director above a bunch of boards that she's a director of. Catherine Flowers. She's an environmental health research author. Not a scientist, an author. Representative Connor Lamb, 17th District of Pennsylvania, Democrat. Gina McCarthy, first White House National Climate Advisor. No experience as a scientist. Representative Donald McEnchin, Virginia, 4th District, Democrat. Varshini Prakash, climate activist, executive director of the Sunrise Movement.
You know who I see? You know who I don't see on there?
A scientist?
Well, besides that,
Because that's what I was looking for. I was looking for the scientist.
yeah. Besides that,
Because through 40 pages of this, we're supposed to follow the science, but there's not one scientist on this board.
yep, they say it a lot throughout these recommendations. You know what I don't see? Any Republicans.
Right.
So it's just lopsided right from the get-go.
Right underneath after they send the board, fierce urgency of now. Our communities are facing worsening disasters and storms, fires, floods, and droughts. All right? So the liberals, why are we suffering fires? Liberals refuse to clean out the underbrush of their forest. Trump said this for 4 years. California, if you want to stop your fires, clean out the brush. Floods. Why is there floods? Because they're building too many affordable housing in the wetlands. Who's going to move into a wetland? Somebody that can't afford a regular house outside the wetlands. So now when you lose all your wetlands, when you have flooding and you have rain and you have snow runoff, there's nothing to absorb it. These wetlands are where they're supposed to be for a reason, to absorb the wetlands. Droughts have been going on since I was a kid. We spent a little time out west. Since the 70s, the Colorado River hasn't reached the ocean because of liberal policies on putting neighborhoods in places in the desert. You cannot build a neighborhood in the desert without taking water from somewhere.
So on these task force recommendations, it talks about hope and opportunity. And it goes on to say that the climate crisis is an opportunity to improve the lives and conditions for the American people. We will win by conveying positive, visionary stories about the future of America over the next 4 years The American people need someone they can believe in and something to fight for, not just against. We don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, we don't believe there's anyone in Congress or anyone in this current administration we can believe in. Because when you don't include everyone, you really don't care. What we need to fight for right now today is to take back our government from these congressional hacks, as Jack likes to call them. It is our time to take the reins back from these people who have been in office for years and years. It's time for them to go. It's time for new ideas and new leadership. We need people in office that care about everyone, no matter their skin color, no matter their religion, no matter where they come from, as long as they come here legally.
Well, I have a question. On this board, are these hacks getting paid?
I'm not sure about that.
Well, we're going to find out, and then on the next one, I'm going to show you how we're going to find out. But are these morons, are they getting paid? And if they're getting paid, where are they getting paid from? Are they getting paid from tax dollar?
Oh, you know that's where it's coming from if they are.
Right, because they don't know how to produce a dollar.
Yeah.
Now, I also want everybody to understand that you're listening. I didn't have time to do this. But I want you to continually keep a tally of how many times we say something about funding, whether it's through private sector or through the government, because it's astronomical number.
When I was reading these recommendations, I couldn't believe all the new departments and positions they want to create. I don't know where they're getting the money for this.
The bureaucracies, and the end result for these bureaucracies is endless, bottomless pits of money and laws and regulations that they're illegal laws, they're illegal regulations. Again, there's about a handful of times in each one of these 6 categories that they talk about executive order. So they want to produce bureaucracies, executive order, so that it can make taxes, funds, and laws all 100% illegal.
All these recommendations, you know where they head us to? Towards the Green New Deal and a massive infrastructure package that's currently in Congress. Democrats want to control the electricity sector, transportation, manufacturing, fossil fuels, our parks, our monuments, and even our oceans. It's not going to end until they control every aspect of our lives. We've said it multiple times. We believe in renewable energy. It makes it a better place for our kids in the future and our grandkids. But you can't do away with proven methods that have worked for decades. You can't get away with energy independence. Democrats want solar and wind energy and want to create 60,000 onshore and offshore wind turbines. But check this out, Jack. Large wind turbines require a large amount of energy to operate. Wind plants must use electricity from the grid, which is powered by coal, gas, or nuclear power. But yet the Democrats want to get rid of our gas here in the United States and rely on foreign oil. I mean, I hope you can see where this is going, folks. They say they have a great idea. We don't feel that way.
Yeah, well, you go into the next page, and so bullet number 2, which is bullet number 1 on the second page, we value the truth. Scientists and experts are clear. So, okay, to launch a national mobilization to build clean energy economy in the next decade to protect our families' homes, preserve the world for our kids and grandkids. So here's my questions on that statement alone. All right, they value the truth and scientific experts. So there's no scientist on the Unity Task Force, number 1. Number 2, they're worried about the kids and the grandkids who's going to have the timeline and have to suffer the longest, apparently, on them. Why are they not worrying about our kids and grandkids when it comes to the economy of our deficit? Because, again, they're the ones that are going to carry it the longest through their entire life, not just their adult life like we are.
You know, in this these recommendations they care about, they say they want to protect the habitat and they want to take care of the forest and everything like that. But just getting back to these wind turbines, you know what it does? It affects wildlife.
Yeah.
It doesn't protect their habitat. You know, it's kind of an oxymoron because they want to save the planet, but yet they want to have stuff that hurt animals. I mean, so what is it? I mean, they are so confused right now.
You want to know why?
Yes, I do.
They're confused because there's no science to finish up their thoughts.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. So in our previous podcast, we've talked about our congressional hacks getting farther and farther away from us by creating bureaucracies. And we mentioned a couple minutes ago, but they want to create so many different departments. They want to create a Department of Justice to hold corporate polluters accountable. And within this Unity Task Force, they have environmental justice stories, which I found amusing, because they pick a certain area and use it to say climate change is a major issue. And one of the stories says about hookworm and raw sewage in a little county in Alabama, which caused tropical illness and diseases of extreme poverty. And it was a 19th century disease. It's not only thriving in Alabama, it's thriving all along the South. Children playing near raw sewage due to lack of affordable septic systems, forcing residents to use rudimentary solutions that fail when it rains or floods and the sewage enters their homes. I am sure that's true, but we have to take a deeper look at what's going on. Again, it's a failure of our government, failure of our leaders about not getting the correct resources to make that place safer. It's a serious issue, hookworm. It's not a race issue. It's a lack of leadership issue. It's a government failure. I mean, I can give you examples of all this, but I'm sure you see what I'm trying to get to.
Well, you know, we used to have this again. We used to have raw sewage going into the East River, and the people of the city, my father, my grandfather, they used to play in that sewer. They used to swim in that. You couldn't swim in that water until the year 2000, before it was finally cleaned up. I have two other bulletins I wanted to. This is how far away from the Constitution these people. They don't even have a clue that there is a Constitution. Here's Bulletin 3. All people have value. All people deserve universal rights and protection regardless of class, age, race, geography, or political party. Bulletin number 3. Hope and opportunity. The next 4 years, the American people need someone they can believe in and something to fight for, not just against. Okay, so the first one, this was already done already. It's called the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Declaration of the Constitution takes care of hope and opportunity, and the people do have someone they can believe in and something to fight in, and it's called freedom and God.
So I mentioned about the holding polluters accountable for their actions, and they should be held accountable. They want to seek additional legislation to hold corporate executives personally accountable. I agree with that, but there are several laws in the books that already hold these people accountable, and it's enforced through the Environmental Protection Agency. Why don't we try and start following the laws that are currently on the books instead of trying to create new ones that don't work, and hire the people necessary? Then the EPA can go out and do their jobs that will hold people accountable, hold executives accountable. We can make a better system. We can make a better America. We just need to follow laws that have already been passed.
Listen, we don't need the DEC. If they followed the laws that were there, these companies would have to face not the DEC and their fines, but the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is the one should be doing this, and the FBI, KGB, should be building the cases against them. We don't need another bureaucracy to go out there and do it. You know, you see that somebody's doing this wrong, the Department of Justice has to tell the FBI, look into this and get this going. You know, here's another thing we got going on here. On the last bullet they had before jobs and workforce, this is the introduction to that. We will ensure that green jobs are not just good for the planet, but they're good for the workers too. So again, here's these jobs that they're going to give to all of these minorities and disadvantaged people. They're not here. They don't exist. We don't have these jobs to give them. We're not up to that. There is no green energy economy
They
right
haven't
now.
created any jobs yet.
And maybe they haven't
they've lost a
created them.
couple. They've lost some in the energy industry because they stopped the Keystone Pipeline.
Yeah, and they stopped coal from mining for coal, and
You know what that did? So now let's see, your small mom and pop businesses, your restaurants, your clothing stores. What are they going to do now? There's nobody to buy their products.
delis, restaurants.
Right, delis. So you're right. They haven't created any jobs, but they're supposed to create millions and millions of green energy jobs. Where are they? You don't get rid of something until you have something in place.
Yeah, and they don't have. And you want to know why they don't have any of these? Because there's no scientist on your board. How can you have? There's no incentive for the work builders, the entrepreneurs to get into this, because it's just laden with regulations. And then they say they want to get these good paying jobs for these communities. Well, if green energy is so cheap, how are you going to get a good living out of it? If it costs you nothing to develop this energy, then how are you going to pay these people? Not through energy bills, because it's not going to cost us anything.
You know, we seen that under the Obama years. Where were all their green energy jobs? None.
Right?
None at
As a
all.
matter of fact, that one Solandro went out of business.
Yep, $500 million.
500 million, $500 million gone.
Where'd that money go?
Nobody knows.
Yep. So I really enjoyed doing this research. And climate change is a huge issue. But I found this editorial. And it's the stunning statistical fraud behind the global warming scare. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, it may have a boring name, but it's a very important job. It measures U.S. temperatures. Unfortunately, it seems to be captive of a global warming religion. Its data are fraudulent. And what do we mean by fraudulent? How about this? NOAA has made repeated adjustments to its data for the presumed scientific reason of making the data set more accurate. There have been hot years and hot decades since the turn of the last century, and colder years and colder decades, like we've talked about. But the overall measured temperature shows no clear trend over the last century, at least not one that suggests runaway warming. Far from legitimately adjusting anything, it appears they are cooking the data to show a politically correct trend toward global warming. Not by coincidence, that has been part and parcel of the government's underlying policies for a better part of two decades. The global warming scare is basically a hoax. I've been talking to people for years about this. I've always said it's been a hoax. I mean, this winter, for instance, as measured by temperature in city after city and by snowstorm severity, has been one of the coldest on records in the Northeast. Climate analyst Paul Homewood notes, for instance, that in New York State, measured temperatures this year were 2.7 degrees or more colder since 1943.
Maybe that's why Obama bought that house on the island.
Maybe.
And the administration, two administrations before that, the vice president, Al Gore, bought one on the coast in California. Another place that's supposed to be the first one underwater.
So we're talking almost 70 years. 70 years. I think you can gauge when something's cold or warm. But New York was 2.7 degrees colder. I am so glad we moved out of New York.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So you can't tell me there's global warming without any scientific data.
So here's another little thing. Job, workforce. The Unity Task Force believes that nothing is more important than building a clean energy economy. At the same time, the Unity Task Force believes we can and must work to ensure that the benefits are widely and fairly shared. The most direct benefits, cleaner air, cleaner water, better health, must accrue all through America. So too must the opportunities in the form of new jobs. Community development. Now, I want you to again, listen to how many times we say community development, because you know what community development means? It means the government owns it. Whenever they talk about the community development, who's going to develop that? The government. So the government is going to own that, and that's how you're going to do it. They keep talking about free college because none of this green energy has any college to it. It's just all training of unrepresented groups.
Yeah, we'll talk about college, and they're creating a 21st century educational system in every zip code.
Well, how can you educate anybody in science when you have no scientists in here, number one? And number two, from kindergarten to 12th grade, you're not teaching them math and science, you're teaching them indoctrination.
Teaching them about systemic racism that doesn't exist.
Right. What you're teaching them is divide and conquer.
You know, critical race theory. I mean, what 6-year-old kid knows about critical race theory?
Well, pretty soon they're gonna know the falsehood of it, but they're gonna think that they're not learning history, they're not learning math, they're not learning science. Actually, for the last year they didn't learn anything because they didn't go to school.
Right. Yep. So I really don't have anything else on this climate change. It kind of frustrates me to even talk about it because I do believe it's a hoax. Do you have anything else you'd like to bring up?
Well, I just don't understand how. You know, I read this entire thing in two separate ways. The agreement that Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders agreed on, and the task force, what's supposed to happen. But the problem is in every one of those pages, they do not explain how it comes to fruition. They say you're going to fund it. They say you're going to have training. How? How does this happen?
Right, it's a Democratic wish list, but they don't tell you how they're going to pay for it.
Because they can't.
Right.
Because first off, 90% of what they want to do doesn't exist. That job is not here. Number one. Number two, how do you pay anybody a good, fair union job when it costs you nothing to use renewable energy? According to them, it's all free.
Yeah.
It's all free, but you're going to get paid for doing it. Doing what? We don't know. Doing it how? We don't know. And where is the pay going to come from? Because everything is free.
I have no clue. Like I said, it's just a Democratic wish list. It's a radical agenda. And we need to stand up as Americans to say no. I mean, listen, if there's a better way out there, I'm all for it. But you know what? You can't get rid of proven methods that have worked since the founding of this country.
Since the founding of the first fire, why do we not make fires out of wood anymore? Because it's not sustainable. You can't feed a family of 4 when you're building a fire all day and out there chopping trees and catching your food.
That's right.
So it goes on to the next step. More practical. That's why the good old days are the good old days. They weren't that good.
No, it was rough. It was rough going on.
I mean, you don't want to have to build your house by clearing out and fighting with the animals for the same terrain.
You know what was good about growing up in our area was that we were outside all day long, from sun up to sundown. We enjoyed the sun. Back in New York when I was a kid, we enjoyed the cold. We went ice skating. I played hockey all the time. Played basketball with my friends. So we were outside all the time. We had the opportunity to see this country. But to these kids of today, they don't go out. I mean, I know it's a different country right now. I know we have a lot of bad, but there's also a lot of good.
You know, our parents were onto something. And I did it with my kids. My kids didn't play video games until they were out of high school and bought their own games. They were too busy involved in a lot of other stuff, sports, school, neighborhood friends, bicycles. And when you got out with your friends and you did all of these things, you know what it inspired? Imagination.
Yep.
And imagination brings ideas. And ideas
change the country.
Right. Sitting home playing on a video game does not inspire imagination.
No, it doesn't. So if you don't have anything else, on this climate change issue. That's going to conclude our first part of our 6-part series. And again, the Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force recommendations, also known as the Biden-Sanders Manifesto.
I like to call it toilet paper.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. So today was combating the climate crisis and pursuing environmental justice. The next podcast, we're going to be talking about reforming our criminal justice system. This is going to be a good one. I've got a lot of statistics. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be good because Jack and I both spent many years in the law enforcement community. Again, go to our website, fedupwithpolitics.com. Tell your friends and family. We hope this is an eye-opener for you. Also join us on our Facebook page, the United States Constitutional Group. And as always, we'll end on this. Knowledge is power. We'll see you next time at the tavern.